and welcome to Homeschool Moms Unfiltered. I'm your host, Megan, and my amazing co-host is...
I'm Amanda.
Hello. We invite you to sit back and relax here. We are all about messy, imperfect, relatable homeschool advice and community. We don't show up and tell you how perfect our lives are, leaving you to wonder, how do these two have their shit together? And I feel so overwhelmed and exhausted all the time. Spoiler alert, that's how we feel too. So it's so funny because at the beginning of our episodes, we often joke about people who put out kind of like fake influencer vibes where they show everything perfect all the time. And I was laughing so hard because we were at Nando's for dinner about a week ago. Nando's is like a Chipotle kind of. You order at the counter. It's super casual, but it's chicken. The whole basis is chicken. And then there's different sides and whatever. It's like chill, casual food, whatever. So anyway, the food comes. I'm over at the condiment bar getting some stuff. And I see this lady. She was there with her partner and a kid and whatever. And they set the food down and the kid goes to take a bite of their food. It was a toddler, like a little kid. And she literally slapped the kid's hand because she was filming the food. And I was like, all right then. So yeah, we don't do that.
More likely to slap my husband's hand when kid my hand.
Oh, heck yeah. The toddler. I was like, let your kid eat. Who cares about Instagram?
I don't know if I've taken video of my food, but I've definitely taken pictures of nice food. Yeah, I mean, we did happy hour not too long ago. The setup was really nice. I took a video, but there was also missing bites because I wasn't able to stop anyone. And
well, that's what I was going to say. Like, I think tons of people video their food or take pictures of their food when you smack your kid around. The video, it's like that's like next level commitment to sharing your food on the internet,
especially at like a fast food place. I mean, like I suppose to each their own, right? So listen, like if you haven't picked it up yet, we are also over here, overwhelmed and exhausted, doing the best that we can most days. Some days we're just holding on. And some days that's really the best that we can do. We are veteran homeschoolers, but that doesn't mean that we wouldn't give anything for a few more hours of the day or a personal assistant or, AI ethical issues notwithstanding, maybe a robot maid. Just putting that out there.
I would love a robot maid. Oh my gosh, I'm telling you. Oh, the other thing that we're all about here are secular and progressive values. And boy, has it been a rough week on the internet. All around, just all around. It's been a rough week.
Like not just, the world is becoming a significantly less nice place in all the ways, in all the ways.
Yeah. But we are getting louder by the day with our secular and progressive values, despite the fact that now there is a docs list out there that if you are not praising the sanctity of Charlie Kirk, they'll email your boss or whoever. I don't know. They'll email Amanda and tell her that I'm misbehaving on the internet. Yeah. Martin Luther King Jr. said, there comes a time when silence is betrayal, and we will not betray women who are criminally charged with murder after suffering a miscarriage. We will not betray trans individuals who have every right to exist peacefully in this world. We will not betray our brown neighbors who are afraid of being scooped up at this point just to fulfill a quota. So we invite you to get loud as well in all aspects of your life because human rights are non-negotiable here.
Yeah. And the thing is, like, feel free to get loud with your kids. It is a valuable part of homeschooling. And today we're going to be talking about what counts as school. And spoiler alert, civic engagement definitely counts. It's not just that it counts. It's a core subject in school, and you get to cover it in a way that you're being honest and you're not whitewashing it and you're not giving it, an insanely slanted view. You can bring in a lot of hard truths that can't be brought in the public school right now or anymore. I don't know. I'm not entirely sure. Like it's a mess, right? You can do it and you can do it so much better at home.
Yeah, 100%. So we've been on a roll lately with some back to basics topics. It just feels like a great time of year to revisit some foundational information. It's September and we have so many new homeschoolers who are joining the community at this time of year. Hooray, we love new homeschoolers. And truly, even if you're not new, it's just refreshing to revisit some basics as a gentle reminder. It can be so easy to lose track of certain things throughout the years. And we all benefit from a little back to basics reminder sometimes.
Well, yeah. And back to basics can also be that, like, that like friendly, I mean, it's almost like when you go out for a coffee or a drink with your friend and they're like, "You're right. You're totally right. Like, you've
Mm,
got this. You're doing it right." Like, you've like, yeah, a back to basics episode can absolutely be that like drink with a friend where they're like, "You're not losing your mind. You're right. You're doing
exactly.
it right."
I've been kind of thinking it of like I used to take yoga with this lady when we lived in North Carolina who I absolutely loved. And she just had this way of cueing throughout class where she'd be like, and shoulders are down. And I'd be like, how'd she know my shoulders were creeping up? It was like she was like in my brain, you know? And so she would just give these subtle reminders at the
Mhm.
points that I needed them. And I was like, oh my goodness. I knew
Yeah.
my shoulders were supposed to be down at that point, but it's freaking hard sometimes. Like they'd be creeping up. And so that's it for me. It's like just that gentle cueing of like, okay, here we go.
Yeah, no, totally. But before we dive in, we do like to start every episode with a weekly recap. So if you're new here, we try to do this. It's part of that whole like keeping it real vibe. We don't want anyone to walk away feeling like we totally always have our shit together and you need to somehow live up to that standard as well. So what you got going on in your world, Megan?
Well, we're back home. If you were following along, we've been in the process of emigrating and it's a whole process, right? And so we're back at our apartment, which makes me super duper happy. Yeah, it's just been great. I had an experience over the weekend where it was like the value of leaving a very conservative community. And I know there's a tremendous amount of privilege wrapped up in us finally having been able to do that. We were trapped in the Southeast for years and years and years from my husband's job. And Friday night was Shakespeare in the Park here in Lisbon. And it happened to be at the Botanical Gardens. There was a meetup organized in this teen group that I'm in for all people who are not native to Portugal. And my daughter went and I had said, hey, if you want to bring kids back for pizza, you guys can play Mario Kart and I'll buy pizzas. And I'm just sitting there listening to them hang out. And then at the end, they went out for a gelato and they went for a walk. And I'm like, we struggled so badly. I mean, especially South Carolina was the last place. And it was just, the rhetoric was more and more. And we were in such like a MAGA controlled shit show. And everything was, even if I started a secular group for teens and it was still Jesus filled, like it just, we couldn't escape it. It was everywhere. And I was just like, there's a lightness that comes with not being in that environment anymore. So if you have any chance to escape, not necessarily the country, it is world changing. Absolutely. I am just so much lighter from not being constantly weighed down by that. So that was lovely. She had some friends over and yeah, that was good. My oldest is in Frankfurt for the weekend. He's actually on his way home right now. He went to go play Pokemon at a big event. And it was the first time that he's traveled completely by himself like that, where he wasn't meeting up with another group of teens or my other son wasn't with him. Like he just went to Frankfurt by himself. So that was like, woo, but he did amazing. So that's that. I'm considering going to see the Downtown Abbey movie. I'm pretty excited about it. And so I think I might need to. I'm reading a pretty average, lackluster book, but I'm almost done with it. I can't give up on books. I suck at it. So that's that. But possibly the most exciting thing going on in my world, talk about non-influencer vibes, is that my youngest kiddo is going to see the ear, nose, and throat doctor tomorrow, which I am so excited about. I mean, talk about Instagram worthy life, right? But if you've listened for any period of time, his ears are a chronic issue. And it took a long time for me to get the scheduling lined up to get this appointment. And I'm just like super freaking excited to go and be like, what can we do that's more proactive? So that's pretty much the highlight of my week this week, actually, is that we will go have Liam's ears looked at on a giant television screen. So yeah. How about you? I know you've been a little under the weather. What you got going on?
Yeah, well, we had a dentist appointment this morning, which went well.
Hot
Now
stuff.
yeah, exactly, right? Talking about non-influencer vibes, but now we have to tackle orthodontia. That's like the next. I've got to get some consults scheduled, so that'll be exciting and stupidly expensive. So yeah, it's been a rough week in my world. Like, no joke. There were just a lot of things going on at the beginning of the week. And sometimes you're just that thing where you're like on the hamster wheel and you're trying to like get your feet under you, but you never quite feel like you're in a vertical upright position and you're always at risk of like falling on your face. And then at the beginning of the week, I burnt my hand which is not a huge deal, but it was just enough that I couldn't wash my hair all week because it hurt to put my hand in the warm water of the shower. And so it's finally better. I washed my hair yesterday. Well, I mean, it's well enough that I can wash it without too much discomfort. So that's nice. My big thing though, yeah, I was super under the weather. I finally got, well, not finally, I was able to get the new updated COVID vaccination. For anyone who's been listening for any length of time, I have loads of health issues and chronic health issues. It's not a problem for me to get it, even with all of the new restrictions. I just went to my regular pharmacy, and you can tell from the medications I'm on, like, oh, she's got this condition, and this condition, and they're all on the list. No problem. Here you go. But that new Moderna spike protein, I mean, I'm all for vaccinations, but it kicked my, it was really rough. You know, like I had a fever for 2.5 days, and the nausea this time, the nausea that came with this specific vaccine, I hadn't had that with anywhere close to these levels with any of the previous ones. And I'm like fully vaxxed because I was one of those lucky people. I've only had COVID once because we have to be very, very careful about it. But I got the rebound infection. So I basically tested positive for COVID for 23 days. So it's no surprise to anyone that I ended up with long COVID and lots of other issues. You don't really test positive for COVID for 23 days and not have issues after it. Also, no surprise that the vaccine kicked my butt. Every vaccine does. That's one of my many health issues. But I think I'm coming out on the other side of it. Last night, my temp was up a little before I went to sleep, but I woke up feeling okay. So we'll see if it stays that way. And if not, at least I got the kid to the dentist. We got recording done. And if necessary, I will crawl back into bed and pull the covers up when we're done. And that'll be okay. And we'll sort out school another day. It'll be fine. Yep.
He'll still learn something.
That's it. He's just doing some of his own stuff. And if novel study doesn't get done because I can't be bothered to read his book and I just want to read my Mafia Light book, that's okay too.
Yes, it is. And we're going to talk about that a bit in today's episode.
Yep, exactly. Okay, so today's episode, what actually exactly counts as a school? So I think this is going to be a pretty interesting episode because if you've listened to us for any period of time, you already know this, but make pretty different takes on a lot of things. I expect that we'll have a variance, a difference of opinion. So we'll see how that goes. I'm quite an aggressive academic homeschooler. Meagan is a self-described loosey-goosey unschooler. And we have mastered the art of agreeing to disagree on homeschool approach, stuff in general, while still actively, positively, happily cheering the other one on and supporting their kiddos. Because we both have amazing kiddos who are doing great things and they're happy and they're growing and developing and becoming amazing humans. And like, we do not agree to disagree on human rights, but we absolutely agree that there are different ways of raising happy, healthy, well-developed children. So it'll be interesting to see exactly, with our difference of opinion as far as homeschool stuff goes, how this one shakes out.
Yeah, I agree, right? If I had to guess, I would think that many new homeschoolers are likely going to lean more towards a structured approach or have a more linear view of what counts as schooling and may come away from this episode thinking I'm a bit bananas at points.
In fairness, you are a bit bananas, but not just because of this.
Oh, yeah, for sure. No, I mean, we went to a picnic yesterday and it was like a whole gathering in the park and whatever. And I was talking to somebody and somehow I ended up on the topic of the time that we drove 27 hours to look at rocks because my kid was like, can we go look at them? And I was like, sure. So I will freely admit that I've set a precedent where pretty much anything goes. But I mean, here's the deal too. Like when I was new to homeschooling, I don't think I would have aligned with the me that I am today either, because I've talked about the fact that I took the what kind of homeschooler quizzes are you? And when it came up unschooling, I was like, that's ridiculous. I can't just not educate my kids. We're not doing that. So there's an evolution process that should take place, I think. And I would say you've evolved too since you started homeschooling.
100,
I mean,
yeah,
100%. It's
100%.
been years. You should be growing and developing and seeing things in new ways and experimenting and all of that. So yeah, exactly. But I think there's an interesting line between the concepts or terminology behind school, quote unquote, and learning. And homeschooling blurs that line on the regular in general, right? But then where you land on the spectrum of homeschool philosophy might make that life even blurrier than others. I saw a post in one of the Facebook groups that we're both in today that was like, how much do you spend a month on homeschooling? And my immediate thought was like, well, what are we defining as homeschooling? Because like my kid went to Frankfurt this weekend to play Pokemon. The amount of learning that happened. I mean, he had to navigate. He'd never been to Frankfurt before. So he lands at this airport. He's got to figure out how to get himself from the airport to the hostel on public transport. He does not speak German. He had 2 flights, and the first one was delayed, which meant he was going to miss his connection. He had to go get himself rebooked on another airline, on a direct flight. I mean, the amount of learning in this. So am I including that? Because then in that case, that just jacked up my homeschool bill by like €185 this month.
Yeah.
But for us, almost everything is school. And that's where we'll probably differ a little bit.
Yeah. Well, but I mean, I think that's true for a lot of families too. I know for us, we do some things that many other families would consider like extracurriculars. And a lot of our stuff is unfortunately ends up being in the late afternoon or evening or like weekend kind of things because it is designed for kids to come after school when they get off of school, golf and chess club and those kinds of things. For us, that's also part of school. And I often include those costs as part of school because I consider that physical education and team skills and all of these kinds of things. But a family who's going to public school would not consider that part of their cost to attend public school, right? So there's like a weird line.
Yeah.
Before we get any deeper, this is a real back to basics kind of episode, right? And we are confident that we will have some new homeschoolers listening. So let's just take a quick moment to address the law. So we're based in the United States. That's primarily what we're going to talk about. There are regulations in other countries as well, and this will apply broad strokes to that too. Okay, so some states are more regulated than others. However, even in high regulation states, you can absolutely count organic learning experiences, field trips, et cetera, as school. So if you are thinking, well, I live in Missouri and I need a gazillion hours, or I live in New York and I need a formal learning plan. So none of this applies to me. That's not true. Okay. It does apply to you. We promise. Okay. In fact, I would argue that if you live in a state like Missouri where you need loads and loads of hours, you need this episode more than anyone else because that many hours of seat work is brutal. Even for the most academically inclined and motivated kids out there, like no one, even adults don't enjoy sitting for 8 hours a day, just sitting and like pouring through textbooks and educational videos, right? Like we want to be able to get up and move around and learn in all different kinds of ways and hands-on and, going to museums or experiences, right? There's so many other ways. So finding these like less conventional ways to fulfill your hours while making learning amazing and engaging and all of those things that we're all striving to do is going to be so important.
And I feel like it's exceptionally important that you, the academic homeschooler, said that over me. It's kind of that like trust the source situation, right? Where it's like, well, of course she's going to say that, but you said it. So I feel like it carries more weight.
Well, yeah, but I mean, I think that sometimes too, as academic homeschoolers, we forget the reality of brick and mortar school and public school, especially. And I like to always point out, like when I'm doing coaching sessions and things like that, hey, if your kiddo was in public school, they would have a random field trip to the baseball park to watch a game or to the zoo to wander around and have a picnic or, and like they aren't actually learning anything there. They're just going for a good time and to have that experience. And that counts as a school day. It's not like the school reports out to the state is like, well, we brought all the kids in, but you don't need to pay us funding for that day because we went on a field trip, right? Or the subs are out sick or the teacher's out sick and they have a sub or they don't have a sub, right? And so the principal comes in and watches over everything, but actually has no idea what's going on. And the kids just, play. I don't know if they even still play 7 Up, but like they play some game in the classroom or whatever it is, it's a rainy day. So they just watch weird movies. Like there's so many days in school that are not chocked full of wonderful learning experiences and great intellectual development. And the state still reports that as a full school day and they were here and they did the things. So like you get to do that too. Like don't hold yourself to an even higher standard than the schools. Just as far as reporting goes. Hopefully you're holding yourself as far as education and resources you provide to a higher standard than like 30-year-old textbooks. But yeah. Okay. So all of that. We have lots to talk about. Another really quick point that I just want to say before we dive in today is that I want to make sure anyone who's listening keeps in mind that you can absolutely live in two different places on this topic. You can have two sets of feelings, much like you can be sad for yourself and happy for your friend at the same time. So for me, again, I'm going to guess that the vast majority of the things that we talk about today, I'll absolutely agree that they are learning. And most of the time, I would be thrilled for my kiddo to also be learning these things in many of these ways. But also, they mostly count as extras and electives for me and our family. I'm definitely a multi-potentialite. My kiddo is too. So in our home, we focus a lot of our core learning on a solid foundation of all the basics, right? Like we just want to make sure that we have just solid of everything. And then, also doing loads of electives and extra things that we enjoy and enrichment. And it works for us because we love learning, right? Like in that nerdy, I read a peer-reviewed research paper for fun, right? And we prefer documentaries over movies and TV series kind of thing. We are one of those weird families that just loves the chance to learn new random facts. We've never met a history tour we didn't like. I buy a Lonely Planet book for every country we go to because we like reading the sections on history and culture and popular food and the people and all of the extra sections. We don't use too many of the recommendations inside, but we totally use it as a jumping off point for a cultural textbook or geography study when we travel places. We just like that kind of thing. And it is totally 100% okay if this isn't you or your child or your family as a whole. You should not try to squeeze yourself into the model that I personally use or that Meagan uses, right? You shouldn't try to be either one of us. But also, if you are like us and you sometimes, the internet has become a crazy place, right? Social media has become an extra crazy place. And no lie, I sometimes feel honestly like kind of attacked or shamed a little in homeschool circles because I'm not totally anti-traditional school subjects. There's this, you either all the school subjects or you should like throw out all the state standards. And it's okay if sometimes, people look at what you're doing and they're like, oh, your school day is too long. You ask too much of your child. Kids shouldn't be. If it works for you, it's okay. Just remember, homeschooling is about works for you and your kiddo. It's not just about you as the parent being like, I'm fine with this many hours of school. If your kid's not thriving, then it's not working. But, just keep in mind that it's a whole spectrum, right? It's a continuum. There are people who would tell Meagan that she is far too structured to be considered an unschooler. And there are people who will tell me that I am not an academic aggressive homeschooler because I don't give my kid grades. He doesn't do graded tests, so I don't actually care about academics. Like we're on a spectrum. We're all on a spectrum, and that's it.
Yeah. I was thinking when you said, like, if people tell you that you're mean for having your day be so long, I was like, unless you're one of those people that's showing up to a Facebook group and saying, like, we're on the struggle bus, right? And all the comments are like, your homeschool day is too long. Those ones you should believe. If you're on the struggle bus, something's not working and you got to go back and figure out what that thing is. But like to your point, if it's working, it's working, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Don't fix what isn't broken.
Yeah. I mean, I think you nailed it too. Like, school is not limited to books, computers, pencils in hands, and worksheets. The life you described, documentaries, travel, all that kind of stuff. I met somebody yesterday who told me about this website and I forgot to get the name, but he showed me everything about it, but I forgot to get the name. But you can go on, you can put in the name of the documentary and it'll tell you what countries that documentary is available in on Netflix, because Netflix changes based upon country, based upon what's popular and what's a hit there, based upon what they have licensing rights to and distribution rights and whatever. And so we were talking about this documentary called Inside Job. It's like 10 or 15 years old. It'll make you completely ragey. It's only like an hour and a half, and I had to watch it in two parts. It's about deregulation of the financial sector and how we ended up where we are now, basically unchecked capitalism. And so it's not available on Netflix here in Portugal. He punched it in. It was available in like Belgium and here and there. And he was like, oh, I'll just VPN over to that country and be able to watch it. And I was like, I can watch documentaries from all over the world from Netflix. Oh my gosh, life just got so much better. So we are basically the family that you just described, except for us, that is school. And for you, it is learning. But it does not have to be sit down book work. I mean, I see so many posts that are like, I'm in Missouri. How am I supposed? I think it's 1,000 hours or something. It's batshit crazy. How am I supposed to do this? And it's like, you are not supposed to have your kids sitting down doing worksheets for that many hours a day. We're going to talk about what counts as school more. And those things go towards those hours, which is huge.
Well, yeah, that's it. And, I mean, the reality is if you live in Missouri and you bring this up to someone who's a public school teacher, they're going to be like, well, sure, you should, but that's their wheelhouse. Homeschooling is not their wheelhouse, so there are absolutely ways to, you can address the law, you can hit the things you need to do, and it doesn't have to be so painful that you're in a Facebook group going, this is not working, I need to send my kid back to public school.
Exactly. Well, and to just be a complete asshole, I just looked it up. Missouri ranks 33rd in education. I'm not anti-public school in the sense that it shouldn't exist. I just think it's tragically broken beyond belief. And so it's like, if a public school teacher tells you that you should be doing what they're doing, like, the proof is in the pudding. Like, is that going so well? And I'm sure that teacher is trying their absolute best with what they have available to them and all of that. But that system is broken, right? It's very broken. So
it needs a lot of help and work.
Yeah,
but we do. That is one of the areas we disagree on, like what that looks like and what that means. And that could be a whole episode. It's been a whole book series, right?
Yeah. And they rank 43rd for higher education. So they're not exactly cultivating this lifelong love of learning in the younger years and preparing kids to go on to higher education. There's a disconnect there somewhere. So anyway, according to U.S. News and World Reports, I didn't make that up.
Okay. It's true. And, that thing, again, it doesn't have to be workbooks and textbooks and all of that. There is loads of hidden learning in everyday life. And while we really, really, really push and encourage this in that deschooling phase, like when you first start homeschooling, and if you haven't listened to that episode, we really go into that. We cover it in some of our online courses as well. If you haven't done deschooling and you're like, I can't not school, like that's not what it is. And we really push that, but it doesn't have to be just in that deschooling phase. There's so many things. Cooking is math and science. Real cooking, there's again so much math, especially if you're saying, hey, let's double this recipe or let's have this recipe. There's so much science you can look at. We just did a unit study on pizza, and they go into like how to make a good gluten-free crust in one of the videos we recommended. And I learned so much about like the chemistry of why and how you get and why it matters so much and why the dough has to look so different if it's gluten-free because of what the gluten does. Things I had no idea about. I mean, I live for gluten, don't get me wrong, but I found it really interesting because, again, I'm that nerdy kind of family, but that's science, right? I mean, that is 100% science. It's nutrition. It's life skills. Like cooking covers so many things that are in public school or that were in public school when we were there, and the funding has been cut because they can't figure out how to get better test scores on standardized testing. So they're cutting home ec and they're cutting these kinds of things. We don't have to do that. We get to make sure our kids are well prepared for the world, not just well prepared for standardized testing. We started off the segment talking about civic engagement. Civic engagement You're covering history, government, critical thinking skills, reading comprehension, communication, interpersonal communication, debate skills. When they're younger, there's so much focus in school about the opinion piece and like being able to write, and there's the Venn diagram of two different opinions. And you write about that. Civic engagement is great for that kind of stuff and covering that. And then, even in hobbies, again, hidden learning in everyday life skills, things like knitting and gaming and gardening, right? Again, there's so many different ways you can look at that. There's problem solving, critical thinking, creativity, persistence. There's working on fine motor skills, depending on the age of your kiddo. You're absolutely doing that with those hobbies. There's pattern recognition, depending on what you're doing. You could do nutrition and part of your health class with gardening or some of these. There's so many things you can find that are wrapped up in everyday things that you want your kiddos to learn. Again, that thing, do you want them to just be able to do well on a standardized test, or do you want them to be able to feed themselves when they leave your home?
Yeah, that's an important thing. Kind of important if you'd like to sustain life. Yeah, I mean, life skills, keeping up with chores, keeping up with meal prep, keeping up with grocery shopping. I've talked about it before. Amanda's probably tired of me bringing it up. That book that we read in our other book club called How to Raise an Adult. We should read that in the Homeschool Moms Unfiltered book club at some point. Like, we should put it to a vote because our members get to vote on future books and whatnot. But that book was amazing because I realized my kids weren't doing enough chores and stuff like that. But it talked about the downstream effect of kids who are going out into the real world without these skills and how paralyzing it is for them to try to function in the real world. So it was interesting because we just came back from the UK, but my oldest kiddo, who's 17, almost 18, wasn't with us. He came back from summer camp and I had said, do you want to come meet us in England? And he was like, no, I'm kind of happy here. He's an introvert. So he was like, apartment to myself, force me, please. And it was hilarious because he was going grocery shopping and stuff like that. I kind of envisioned him like Kevin from Home Alone in the grocery store, But, I mean, even just things like keeping toilet paper in the house, like all that stuff that it's like, do you ever see videos online where it's typically male partners who say like, this countertop is magical because every day I put my coffee cup here and every day it disappears, and they're like, it's just magic. And typically a female partner is standing there shooting laser death rays out of their eyes going, it's not fucking magic. I put it in the dishwasher every fucking day because you don't clean up your shit. It's like, giving our kids those skills that when they go out into the world, they can run a household, they can live in a shared living space, whether it's in college or in an apartment that they'll most likely be sharing with 10 other people because cost of living is so high. So, making sure that they are prepared for those things is all really important stuff. I mean, I remember when my kids were little, we used to take notepads to the grocery store with us, like the little flip book kinds that you get at the dollar store or whatever. And I would give them a challenge while I was shopping to just find one food for every letter of the alphabet. And they had to write it down. And we'd go when it was not crowded. Do not do this on a Sunday afternoon when everybody and their brother is there buying cold cuts for school lunches for the upcoming week and whatever else. This is a quiet time activity. We are homeschoolers. You no longer have to subject yourself to the supermarket on the weekends. You are free. You can go on Tuesday at 11:30 when there's nobody there. That's the time you do stuff like this. But they would sit there and they'd slowly and painstakingly be writing down avocado, copying one letter at a time from the sign to the paper and the sign to the paper. Or when we would go to the farmer's market, on the drive there, I'd be like, I forgot to make a list. Can somebody help me? And they would spell it the way they thought it was spelled. Or sometimes they would ask a question about how something was spelled and we'd get there and I'd have a list and I'd tell them how many of stuff I needed and all of that. This is early project management and task management. So this is life skills that they're going to need.
Well, absolutely. I know for us, again, my kiddo is 11, so a bit older. And so when we go grocery shopping, he is absolutely in charge of like, oh, we need another box of Cheerios. Can you check which one is the better price this week? And he's in charge of figuring out which one is like how much per ounce and which box is better.
My daughter did this recently with cereal.
Huh.
It was when we were living in South Carolina and my oldest had gotten his license. And so he would drive her to the store and she would shop and I would give her the list. And she came home with, I think it was Cheerios actually, but she came home with a box of cereal that was so freaking small because that was the cheapest per ounce. I was just like, great job. We're going to be out of cereal in an hour, but zing. I didn't want to be discouraging.
That is one of those great things. Like, yes, that is a better price. So what does that mean we need to do? What's the next step after figuring that out? Like, now we probably need to buy 14 boxes to make sure it lasts until our next shop. We did that recently because we like to shop at this place called Grocery Outlet, and they get all kinds of these like random, really good deals. And Cheerios have been stupidly expensive lately. And they
Interesting.
had these Cheerios that were incredibly cheap, but it was single serving bags. They were these bags, and you open them up, and they literally, and I was like, well, I mean, it's terrible that we're creating this much waste, but they're going to get bought and used anyway. They're at Grocery Outlet as a closeout, so they'll be gone. We'll just, it's fine. It is what it is. But yeah, I mean, we had stacks of these boxes of bags of single serve Cheerio bags, basically. I mean, like, yeah. But again, this is something that they're going to have to learn at some point, and you can scaffold this just like you scaffold anything else. These are life skills that you can and you should scaffold. Please don't send your kid to college and have them like stumble through these kinds of things or make really poor choices that aren't going to really hurt anything except for their bank account, but they don't need to. You can 100% do these things and teach them, right? Again, these life skills that should be part of your academics. So Meagan kind of already brought this one up as well, but existing in the world, whether you're just navigating around your own small town, that 100% counts as your geography, your map reading, practicing these skills, remembering how to find road signs and getting around. Those are all skills that kids learn in a classroom, and you can actually be out doing it with your kid and helping them figure out where to find the road signs and navigating and practicing left and right and identifying landmarks and counting how many blocks between this and that and how you get there. Those are 100% things that are taught in textbooks and workbooks for younger kids, and you can do that in real life. And then if you are fortunate enough to be able to travel, whether you're traveling locally for adventures to go see family, or you're doing bigger trips, or you're fortunate enough to be able to do some sort of part-time world schooling, or even just big family trips. Like I was saying, our family, if we go to a big city, you can be guaranteed we're going to do a hop on, hop off bus tour. It's a great way to get an overview of the city, get lots of snippets of things, figure out where you want to go next, get some random tidbits and interesting facts and stories. And then you go from there. There's just so much that you can learn about cultures and geography and history, sociology, psychology. I mean, it just goes on and on.
Yeah.
And that counts, right? That totally counts.
I was laughing when you said about finding signs and stuff when you're out about. So when the kids were really young, right? So for anybody who doesn't know, my kids are all 3 years and 9 months apart. So I had 3 kids in under 4 years. And I, because of my husband's work schedule, traveled with the kids solo all the time, basically. And so
I'm just going to say, we were talking earlier in the episode about how you are in fact bananas. And I think that plays into it. It created it. Like it's bananas all the way around, but go on.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. And people are like, oh, oops. And I'm like, no, totally did it on purpose.
You did it on purpose. Go bananas.
Yeah. So when they were little and I'd be solo traveling in the car for sometimes hours with these 3 little kids all by myself, they all had car jobs. So I would pack them all snack bags for the car, and they had like check sheets as far as like monitoring their snacks so that they couldn't eat them all in the first hour we were on the road. So it was like they had like a check mark, like you can have a snack like every 2 hours and you have this bag and you get to choose what's coming out of the bag and you have to make sure that you're not eating your snacks too quickly and whatever. So they had jobs. Aiden was the car butler and he was in charge of passing the snacks out because I had them always like in a box in the back. And he sat in the back. And then Astrid was in charge of trash. And Liam was just a little bit too young to have a job, but he wanted a job because that's how being the youngest sibling works. And so his job was sign finder. And I'd be driving and you're on the road for like hours and hours. And he'd be like, gas station. They've talked about how early kids now can recognize logos like the Target logo and McDonald's logos and stuff like that because it's just so pervasive in advertising. And so even when he was like the littlest peanut, he'd be like, do we need gas? Because there's a gas station. And that was like his job that wasn't a job. But I was laughing when you said something about signs because he was very proud of that job.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I will never So we lived in Belgium for a few years. My kiddo was born there. And it was because we got sent there with a company. When we moved there, when we landed at the airport, we had to get a car. There was a rental car to pick up. So we got the rental car, and then we were trying to navigate to our temporary housing. And we'll never forget. At one point, we were stuck in a roundabout. We're like, where are the signs?
Yeah.
We know what street we're supposed to get out of the roundabout on, but where are the freaking signs? Because they're on the building, right? Like they're not on the street corner. And like a great example of learning that would have been really helpful for us to have discovered before we were in a car trying to get to our new home. Why can I not find any signage?
Problem solving is key. To your point, it doesn't have to be, Belgium or Frankfurt. It can be, if you live in the suburbs of Chicago, going into Chicago for a field trip day or whatever is attainable for you based upon your geography and your finances. Field trips absolutely count. It can be going to a state park and going on a hike. That is for us, that is a school day. But to your point, Amanda, too, like if going to the ballpark for the public school system is a school day, that too is a school day. You can count these things. And it's not like you can only count it as learning or school, however you want to define it. If you do prep work or follow-up work, I see posts all the time where people are like, we went to, Thomas Edison's place in New Jersey, and I want to have my kids write an essay. But you don't have to do that. Your kids learned a ton at the thing. There's an audio tour, there's hands-on stuff, there's engaging things that the park rangers put on. If you want to do the prep work, like Amanda said, like before you travel and you like reading books about that area or whatever, okay, great. But that's not the only way to do it. It's not like it doesn't count or it's any less valid of a field trip if you haven't done those things. Because sometimes we do like to do the prep and sometimes we don't. Sometimes we just want to show up and do something and enjoy it for a little bit and have that experience and then move on with our lives. And that's okay too. The biggest piece of advice that I can give you is, we've talked about before about exposure being important when kids are younger. They will find the things they love. They will find the things that set their soul on fire through exposure. And if you make everything drudgery and mundane and filled with work and worksheets and write me a 5-paragraph essay, the exposure loses its impact sometimes, depending on the kid. But it's most kids. Okay. So
yeah, no, I don't remember ever having any sort of a writing assignment after a single school field trip.
no,
We might have talked about it, and there might have been, in a very few cases, some sort of like a multiple choice quiz afterwards about something that we saw or did. But I never had to do some kind of a tedious writing assignment after a field trip. The teachers were just happy that they got us all there and they got us all back on the bus to go home. They were just thrilled when they didn't lose anyone. And you don't want to be in a situation where your kids are like, no, I don't want to do that fun thing because you're going to make me do this not fun
Exactly.
thing afterwards.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
Mhm.
totally. Something else that counts, and you were talking about, that we don't have to give them worksheets or create writing assignments or for whatever you're doing. And that is 100% true. Free reading in any way can absolutely be, and there are curriculums that are based on just reading for fun. I know for us personally, it's one of those things. I get a lot of diverse books from different curriculums that we like or things that we follow or lists online of like how to include diversity and inclusion and things like that. And so I do get a lot of books from those curriculum, but they just go in our like, hey, here's a pile of things to read to make sure that we're reading all kinds of different interesting things. And I mean, we're big readers in our house, like we were saying, but a fun thing that we like to do that extends the learning, but is again free reading. When we're traveling, especially if we're traveling to a different country, we almost always try to find a bookstore, a local bookstore that has an English section. And we go in and we're like, hey, we want a novel in English that's set in this country or that has characters from this country. And then it's that thing. It's a fun free reading novel. They usually give us a few options and the kiddo picks the one that sounds most fun. And it's usually a magical something that has just a little bit different take. It's a little bit different than what we would get from our local public library. And that's great. Like they can just read and take things in. It doesn't have to be, are we sure that they're learning? Are we giving them an AR quiz? Are we, you know, writing it down? I have at some point when he gets older, I might do more of the logging just to help with portfolio and transcript writing and things like that of free reading, or to know for sure like what we've read. My kiddo reads 500 plus books a year. I cannot keep track of all of
No.
I could. I got better things to do.
If no one's asking you to do that,
Yeah.
go enjoy a book for yourself instead, or some peace and quiet, or some stupid rom-com on Netflix. Whatever you enjoy, do that instead of using that time for something that you're not being asked to do. Because to your point, even if you do start doing it again, none of that becomes important until high school years, teen years, stuff like that, if at all. And no one's ever going to ask what books your kids read in the month of March in the second grade when they're going off to college. Like, no one's going to ask. So yeah, if your state does not require it, free that time up for yourself.
No, that's it. At one point when he was younger, because we do these programs that are tied to the public school system, we were in a position where we had to record books and we had a specific reading log. And that's why we were doing it. When we stopped, I just kind of kept doing it. On the one hand, it sort of helped me make sure that I was keeping track of what books had been read and whether or not I needed to get, like it was. But to your point, we got to a point where he was reading so many books, and I didn't really need to keep tabs on which books he was reading anymore, because it wasn't like I needed to make sure I was providing the next book. He's gotten big enough that he just goes and gets a book he wants to read now, instead of me being like, okay, so what might we want to get next from, like we have a much better system down now, because
That was a job when my kids were little. Holy, you're bringing me back. Oh my gosh. I would have a printout in my wallet, especially when Aiden was doing Warrior Cats, because there's like 70 of them and there's different series. And then within each series, there's 5 or 6. Oh my, I had a printout in my wallet that I would keep handy.
Or the Rick Riordan, his whole universe, and like trying to keep track of like where you're at in them and which ones you need to get next. And yeah, no, I mean, so that's it. Like if you're needing to keep track for those kind of things, like, but you'll get to a point where you really don't need to be as involved. And that's fine, because free reading, it's okay to.
It's in the name.
Yeah. I mean, there is too. But, I mean, free reading, you can just read for fun. You can, obviously, I'm a big proponent of encouraging your kids to read things that include diversity and equity and inclusion and, women in STEM and all of those kinds of things. But those are, again, hugely important skills that should be taught to all kids who are getting any sort of education. And it can just be picked up in a natural way through free reading, especially if you're kind of helping with some of those book selections and making sure that you're keeping a really diverse bookshelf or a really diverse hold list from the library.
Yeah. The other thing I would say too is, if you have to keep a book log because your state requires it or the program that you're with requires it, your kid doesn't have to know that you're logging books, because I feel like there's a psychological component then where that becomes less free reading and it becomes more of a task or a chore or a to-do. I mean, if you Google negative association reading lists or something, you play around with the wording, because I haven't done it in a while. There's articles upon articles out there that talk about how the school system's way of approaching reading logs has killed kids' love of reading. It's like one of the factors in there. So even if you are required to do it, they don't need to be a part of it. You can spare your kid from that admin task and just let them love books.
Although I'm thinking now about like how many of my adult friends absolutely love their lists. How many people do you know who post their screenshot or their image of like all the books they read this month? So if you've got a kiddo who loves it, like, go on with your bad self, right? This is one of those things. You get to figure out what works for your kid and what works in your family and do it and have fun.
Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of fun, the other thing that counts is game schooling. And the interesting thing is, Amanda and I always kind of compile our notes separately and then mesh them together. And when I was looking up game schooling, I'm like, this became a spin-off episode that'll be coming up soon because I had so many notes that I pulled together for game schooling that I'm like, this is going to overtake the entire episode. Like, we've talked about game schooling before, and I just kind of ended up in a different little pocket of the rabbit hole as far as very specific skills that come through gaming. And I was like, we need to do a whole episode on this, right? But the biggest thing I think is I see posts oftentimes in Facebook groups where I'm like, I need a game to teach kids math, or I'm looking for educational game recommendations. And yeah, there's some exceptions to the rule, but I would love to just say that most games are educational. And we'll talk about that more when we do that other episode that's specifically dedicated to it. Kids are getting so much from gameplay. You've got SEL skills in there, social emotional learning. You've got executive function. You have logical and critical reasoning, strategy systems, economic thinking. How many games involve money? Sensory regulation, huge for our neurodivergent kiddos, all kiddos, but especially our neurodivergent kiddos, and so much more. So follow us. If you don't already follow us, follow us. That episode will be coming up and we'll get even deeper into game schooling because there is so much to it. And you don't have to ask for educational games anymore because then you'll be like, oh, pretty much all games are educational. Got it.
Yeah. Okay. So we do have more to talk about. Well, I mentioned it before, but just to make sure that you have the details right. So we do have some courses that we created. They're those like online courses, right, where you pay and then you can go in and access it whenever actually works for you, because we all know that we don't have the same schedule. And if you have to log on at a certain time, it's not going to work. But we have these great courses. They are full of incredible information depending on where you're at. So there's one that's preschool and kindergarten reimagined. And we really walk you through how to just teach your kids to love learning without getting too stuck in how do I recreate public school at home. And it's full of links and facts and statistics and information so that you feel really confident making those decisions. We have a homeschooling 101 class that's also really great for people who are just starting out. Again, loads of links and information so that you can feel confident in the choices you're making. But it's also really going to help you work through what's your learning style, what's your kiddo's learning style, what things matter to you, how are we going to implement those, how are we going to let go of the things that we want to let go of, but we don't really know how to, or we don't even realize we want to let go of them. It's full of great things. All of our courses come with workbooks that you can print out. And soon we're going to have those available online so you can buy them as well. But they're just, they're super useful. And they're less than the cost of an entree at most restaurants these days. Because can we talk about how freaking expensive it is to go out to eat now? And then also we have one that's about curriculum. If you're a curriculum person, it could be hugely helpful. But even if you're not a curriculum person, you're like, I just like to pick and choose resources for this or that, or I need something for civics, or I need something for puberty, whatever it is, it's just full of things. And it goes from first grade through high school. So a great resource with tons of secular recommendations. It's great. If you want details, you can find it here in the show notes. On our social media as well, like in Instagram, it's pinned and it's in the links, and you can find it lots and lots of places. But if for some reason you can't, feel free to shoot us a message or whatever. We're happy to help connect you because they're so great. I know that of course we made them, so we're going to be proud of them, but we've gotten some really amazing reviews that have made us feel really good about it as well. We did beta testing and all that good jazz to make sure that we were really giving value, because homeschoolers especially, nobody's looking to waste money on things. It's always like, why? I bought something else, and we want to make sure that it's valuable and really packed full of content and stuff that is helpful. So check out our courses for sure.
Okay, so we're just about done for the day. I thought we could end with a bit of fun. So let's play a lightning round of Does It Count? So each one of us will list off an activity or a topic, and then each of us can quickly say if we consider it to count as school, and that'll be personal opinion because we'll differ on that probably, because mine are basically yes for all of them. And if we had to log it for state requirements, and we had to slot it into a formal subject or whatever for state requirements, what would we slot it under? Sound good?
Yep.
All right, Amanda, you go first.
Okay. Number 1, cooking dinner. For me, that would be, and occasionally it would count. It would depend on when. And It would depend on what he was doing. It may be math and definitely home ec or nutrition.
All right. In keeping with the start of our episode, going to a protest or writing to a legislator. Both of those are 100% yeses for me, and they would fall under civics, communication, and or history.
Okay. Watching a YouTube video or multiple about black holes. Again, for me, that's going to be a maybe. If it's something that we're already doing, then I would for sure count it. If it wasn't something that we were already doing, I would just count that as fun watching because we watch a lot of random fun things like that. But if we were already doing it, it would probably be under astronomy. Science.
I like it. Reading graphic novels. Heck yeah. Free reading counts as school. Already said it. The fact that it's a graphic novel. Let's not be snobs here. Okay.
But the thing, I think most of us saw it, but if not, you should go look for it. There was a recent study that came out that showed that most graphic novels actually have more challenging words, a higher level of vocabulary than novels that are the same age appropriate things. So actually, graphic novels are a great thing to weave in if your kiddo isn't already into them. And if your kiddo is into them, lean into it. There are loads and loads of lists online about like, if your kiddo likes Dogman, they might like these other ones. There's so many great graphic novels out there now. I'll definitely
I like it. So I'd be listing that under literacy, art, and storytelling.
again, we don't really count free reading. I think it's a great learning. We don't really count it in our schooling.
But if you lived in Missouri and you had 1,000 hours of schooling or whatever it is, would you be counting your free reading?
I would count some of it.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. I mean,
otherwise your kid would make the 1,000 hours with just free reading.
We wouldn't do anything else because it's not uncommon for us to have like 3 or 4 hours of free reading a day. It would be our whole school thing every day, 7 days a week. Okay, sports practice. So again, this is one of those things. In our world, we 100% count that as PE.
Absolutely. Playing Minecraft. So I will say I'm not a super Minecraft. I don't know a ton about Minecraft. I lead a book club and sometimes kids bring their Minecraft creations to like represent scenes in the book. It's part of the way we digest our books and whatnot. So I'm exposed to it, but not hugely aware of it. But from my limited understanding, I would say coding, architecture, and potentially teamwork, because I think there's group servers where you build things together, world building together. So yeah.
Yeah. I think depending on what they're doing, I know nothing about it because we don't allow gaming of that kind in our home. And so this would not count for us because we don't allow this kind of thing. But it seems like there's also the option for history and geography in there as well, if I understand correctly how it works.
I think there's some sort of Minecraft education program. I don't know. We don't have Minecraft either. So I'm kind of on my back foot, but I just kind of was like, well, it's going to come up. People are going to wonder if Minecraft is educational. So I was like, let's discuss it.
Yeah, no. And there are absolutely ways that you can weave in more if that's what you're doing. Right.
Yeah.
This one is a big one for me. Helping younger siblings. I think that this is so important and finding ways to do that. So I would absolutely count this. Again, I wouldn't count it for 50% of my hours or anything like that. But in public school, there are all of these programs where the older kids come in and they read to the younger kids, or they help with a certain project, or they do these things to practice and foster these skills. You don't have to set that up in your own home if you have younger siblings already. And if you don't have younger siblings, I know this was supposed to be fast, but I just want to quickly throw this out there. In our home, I have an only child. And we just recently helped host a community event. And my kiddo was in charge of helping with a bunch of the little kids. And so he played with them and he kept an eye on them and he helped entertain them and helped kind of keep them contained when we were in a space that wasn't well fenced or anything like that. It's 100% leadership. In our specific case, it was community service, which is so important in schools these days. If your kiddo wants to get any kind of award or be on any kind of society or anything else, you have to have those community service. And we're just like, it's totally counts as school.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Running a lemonade stand for me, that they're all yeses for me. Amanda's a yeses too. So I don't even have to say that anymore. Yeah, I mean, there's math. You have to make massive quantities of lemonade. So you're multiplying things out. You have to have economics. You have to know what your ingredients cost and what you're going to sell for and all that kind of stuff. And usually, oftentimes, you'll see friends doing it together or siblings doing it together. So then we have to split our profits and et cetera, et cetera. They have to learn to market. They've got to make signs and all that kind of stuff. So, yes, that's a yes for me. They're all yeses.
Going for a hike. This is a maybe for me. You could absolutely count that as an urban hike, PE, whatever, depending on where you are. It might be biology or geology, depending. So there's a lot of things for me that would make it depend, but it's possible.
Mm-hmm. Volunteering in an animal shelter. Yes. Community service, definitely. There's science in there because almost always you're going to have animals coming in and they're like, oh, this one's being treated for this. And somebody will explain it to the kids, like why they're in quarantine or something like that. And then empathy, of course, being a huge one. And despite the fact that we were told that empathy is a new age weak concept, I would like my kids to have empathy. So, yeah.
Yeah. And your public school SEL curriculum is 100% going to cover that. So can too. Playing Dungeons and Dragons. For me, this is a no. It's a no. I'm the aggressive academic homeschooler, so.
So I think from a creative standpoint, Dungeons and Dragons is huge. There's so much creativity in D&D. There's storytelling. I have to create characters and world building, and it goes on forever, first of all. So collaboration and problem solving. And there's leadership available too if you become a DM and you're actually leading your D&D group too. So for me, it's a yes. Listening to music or learning an instrument. I mean, those are two pretty different things, but for me, they both count. So learning an instrument, I mean, obviously you have band in school and you have music. We used to have music class. Now it's all being cut. But so yes, obviously that counts as school and learning in my world. Listening to music though, Kirsten Bowman, who we are both aware of, she teaches classes on OutSchool. She actually did a summer camp at one point that was like revolution through music. And it was all protest music and stuff like that. She's a human rights attorney. So she was covering it from the perspective of civil rights and all kinds of stuff. It was really, really cool. I don't know if standard pop would necessarily, but like listening to music and a journey through music, like, yeah, 100% your kids should know who Simon and Garfunkel are and Meatloaf that goes back decades and decades. Yeah, your kids should know Neil Diamond, bringing back old school music. And I mean, I can go back to Engelbert Humperdinck, listening to that with my grandparents at their house and everything. So music history for us would be history, right? I mean, it would be, as long as you're, exploring and digging in like Ella Fitzgerald and all of these people. So yeah, love music.
Now, I would say that if you're going to allow learning about old music as your education, considering it academic, then you have to allow pop music as well, because there's tons of current culture and psychology and sociology and all of those kinds of things that listening to pop music and actually like dissecting it instead of just picking out a beat and tuning out everything else. Again, a bit of it I might count. It's not going to generally be counted in our home, but we do music. We learn how to read music and play an instrument and that kind of stuff. And that definitely counts as our academics, as an elective.
I think you're right too, because I'm thinking about like the Kendrick Lamar Super Bowl performance, not that was pop, but there was a unit study that was produced like right after that was all of the subtext and all of the symbolism that was tremendously filled with history and learning. So yeah, I think you're right.
Well, I mean, there is that, but I mean, even just looking at Taylor Swift stuff and finding all of the Easter eggs, if that is not an amazing example of reading comprehension and analysis, I mean, there's so much like that. So, if that's your thing and you want to count that, I think you could. Watching Shark Tank, again, that's going to be a no for me unless we were specifically doing some kind of a business class or an economics class. And then it might be a part of it. But generally speaking, TV watching is not considered any of our learning. It's just our fun.
We've talked about traveling already, and we've obviously said, yes, travel is super beneficial. But how are we classifying it if we had to? Geography, social studies, and adaptability, which would fall under kind of an SEL umbrella as far as being able to roll with it when the shit hits the fan, which happens often when you travel. Flights get canceled, you get stuck in pouring rain where you don't know where you are. You get stuck in a roundabout for an hour, whatever.
Yep. And then you share it on a podcast so everyone knows. All right. Last one, binge watching a TV series. Again, this is one of those ones for me it's a maybe depending on a lot of things. But if we were counting it for me, it might be like a media literacy or a cultural studies. It could be philosophy or sociology, depending on what you're watching. We talked about The Good Place recently, and we did watch it as a family. We talked a lot about philosophy, and we pulled out an overview philosopher's book that we had and did some stuff with it and that kind of thing. So in that regard, maybe, yes. But then also like not always.
It depends on the show. Yeah, no, I totally agree.
Conversations you're having and
Yeah.
what you're doing. It's that thing. Everything can be learning. Everything can be enjoyable. And, depending on what you do with it, you can make it more educational, but it's also fine to just binge watch a TV series and not make it part of your homeschooling life. You don't have to turn every book and every TV show into let's make sure we dissect this and talk about yeah.
Let's make a flow chart. Yeah, exactly. Oh my goodness. All right. We have a mantra coming up for you. I would love to give you a reminder. Amanda mentioned it earlier that our September unit study is out. So if you're listening to this in real time, it's on our Patreon. It's cheapest on Patreon. If you're there when they release in real time, they're available for the month when they get released. And then after that, you can always find them on Teachers Pay Teachers going forward. But it's just a really fun one. It's got a whole family pizza night activity theme to it where everybody's making pizzas and doing presentations, and there's a Kahoot and there's a timeline game and there's all kinds of stuff in there. So it's a really fun one. So yeah, check it out. It's either Patreon or Teachers Pay Teachers. We would love to welcome you in either place. But our mantra to end this week's podcast is homeschool life. Worksheets count, but so do protests, podcasts, and pizza night. Learning happens everywhere. So we hope you found this episode helpful and have an awesome rest of your homeschool day. And we'll catch you next week.
Yeah. Have a great one.